Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Rolling Illini, live here from inside Nugent Lounge with my roommate again, Zane Bando.
It's nice to see everybody. It's the first time I'm back in about 3 weeks, and they asked me to do this as of 4 days ago, and we both said sure. So, but we're back here on remote. Both the guys are taking care of some stuff because they have a huge wheelchair basketball game tomorrow in Michigan. They are in a tournament in their openers against the University of Texas at Arlington, so we are most likely going to cover that a little bit. But it is absolutely wonderful to be back in front of all of you tonight, and we appreciate all of you listening.
Happy holiday season. So, without further ado, let's get to it, shall we? So Zach, something that our viewers may not know is that the tournament we just mentioned is in honor of cancer, to raise awareness. So some notable Illini have played basketball with cancer in the past.
Okay.
Including Emily Oberst.
Okay.
Who transferred here from Alabama just this year, and she says that basketball has changed the way she views her illness. So in light of that, I thought I'd ask you, as an avid sports fan, has watching sports changed the way you view your own challenges that come with it?
Well, I have a question to start before I even get to my answer.
Right.
And that question is, what makes her feel this way? Because I don't think as of now you have given a rationale to explain why she feels this strongly about it.
Okay. She said in an interview a couple years back that.
And where did this interview take place, if you can recall that? Just so our viewers can get some sort of a context here.
Oh yes. On KMOV TV.
Okay.
In Missouri.
Okay. Okay. All right.
She said that having the ball go through the hoop is symbolic to her of something going right when so much of her life has gone wrong.
Okay.
To be out there with the team, I imagine, would have represented some sort of a family to her.
Mm-hmm.
So, and a support system. As a fellow person with a disability, I'm sure you understand how vital a support system can be sometimes.
Oh, it's absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
You need to have people behind you at all times.
And for her, I feel like she said, or she didn't exactly say this, but what I gleaned from the interview a couple years back that I watched on YouTube prior to the show is that her team functioned, excuse me, as the sort of glue that
Glue or the catalyst, so to speak.
exactly. So in light of that, I feel like we should talk about the role of sports to inspire.
Okay.
So, have you gleaned any inspiration from your love of sports, or better put, has watching sports changed your view of disability at all?
Has it changed my view of disability at all? No, but it shows that like there is inspiration every single time that you watch a game, whether it's like a close game or not, because you know that like the players on the court or playing field are like doing everything they can to try to win the game, and you know that like for football, like it's like a brotherhood or a bond.
Yeah.
But like especially when a football team is good, they're gonna like feed off of that energy. So that's like really inspiring when like all like 52 guys or however many guys are on the team like can like all buy into the system and like believe in each other that like yeah, we can go out and win every single game no matter what the experts are saying, and that like we're not gonna try to let that hold us back or anything from that perspective or that matter.
Now, some might say that what you just said could be summed up in a simple phrase, and that is keeping out noise.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as people with disabilities ourselves, I know that I haven't necessarily dealt with this a lot, but
Okay.
there have been times that I've had to keep out noise, so to speak.
Okay, can you explain to me an example where that was the case?
Exactly. I can't recall a specific example, but I've had times where my disability has caused people to look at me slightly differently, and I've had to explain things in a
Okay, so like when you say that, what exactly are you trying to get at?
like that. I guess what I'm trying to get at is that they focus on the difference between me and themselves rather than the similarity.
Which, because that's always first thought when like someone who like is able-bodied sees someone differently. So,
Yes.
so that shouldn't come as a surprise to you.
No, it doesn't. But for me, one of the reasons why I got into sports and journalism is that it helped give me an avenue with which to explain those types of things.
Okay.
Have you had any sort of similar experiences? Does my question make sense? You know?
So are you saying if I had any similar experiences where I've had to explain to people like what
where sports language has helped you kind of bridge that gap and create commonality with someone?
I could say that because it gives that other person an avenue to talk about something of that context with me, but I've never really had issues to where like people are not going to treat me the same way because I have a disability. Actually, most of the people who I know are actually curious and want to know more about my day-to-day life.
Yeah, that's the way it should be. You told me over dinner a couple weeks back that you are, some people might consider you, if they look at your Instagram, one of the most popular freshmen on campus. And that is not a self-promo, guys. If you look at the numbers, it's true. You can verify that. So, does that put any extra pressure on you?
Yeah, because with everything I post, I want to make sure that I bring myself to the best way possible, and I'm showing my best self, whether I'm promoting me, Illini athletics stuff back home, etc., etc. I want to make sure that I'm posting things that people care and that people are going to recognize. And I never got into any of this sports stuff to become the way I am today, which is very prominent amongst a group of people. It just kind of happened that way because of the ventures I took on, and they happen to be with the most relevant sports at my high school, and it happened to work out well for me. But I could be the other way. I could be one of those kids with a disability where I don't get noticed at all, and where I have to be handed things, and that was never my intention, and it never will be. And I just try to make sure to I just try to welcome people, because I think it's important. I think it's important to do that, and I think that if you're a good person, no matter if the person has 100 followers or 2,000, if you enjoy that person and you enjoy their presence, you're gonna make it known that if they post something on their account, that you're gonna go on and you're gonna give it the recognition it deserves, no matter how many numbers it ends up coming out to be. You just have to be the best person you can. So, I mean, that's why I'm not a huge fan of the selected people. I think it's fine. They can do whatever they want. I've noticed that with a lot more athletes, that they're careful with who they choose to associate themselves with. So I find it very interesting that I'm in this position now where I have the recognition, and I don't even play a single sport, and there's so many people who know who I am because of the media work I had created. So I don't know. It's very interesting to discuss those things, and it's not that I don't want to be in the position I am right now. I love it. I love having all of the people I care and recognize my things, but I always think about I could be the person that's not in that situation at all. So I know that for sure.
It's interesting that you and I, as people who are at the disadvantage so much of the time, are the ones getting the attention, whereas the undercover athlete who's flying under the radar is not necessarily. What do you attribute what people recognize and what they don't to?
It's because I think people only care about certain things. I don't think, no offense, but I don't think the average person is going to follow a wheelchair basketball player unless the wheelchair basketball player has made themselves known. There's a kid right now who's currently a junior at Oak Park River Forest. His name is Alec Kachubin, and
why have I heard that name?
Because he was on TV. He did that YouTube series for a couple years called Alec on Sports, and he's become really popular, and he'll get verified soon. And there are so many people who know him. He's gonna get into the millions of followers soon. He's really incredible. He's really good at wheelchair. Oh jeez, he's really good at wheelchair basketball. So.
So athletes like that who There you go. Athletes like that could, I'm not saying that the majority of people do this, but they could use their disability as a way to be considered inspirational as opposed to using their disability as a way to inspire.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but what I found interesting when doing research on him though is that his following is so high on like social media, but yet when you look at his YouTube channel, the subscribers are surprisingly lower than I thought they would be, and I wonder why that's the case. I don't know.
I would theorize that because the social media, the I guess nature of social media is quick, small blurbs
Mm-hmm.
that whereas a video takes longer attention span.
Thank you to Adrian Reyes for joining. We appreciated he is our one viewer in the room, so thank you for coming in.
Yes, we can only go up from here. One.
You have 2 viewers. Me.
Well, do you count because you're here live?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Up to you.
That is funny.
But anyway, 1 or 2. Let's get back to it. So, the role of social media to promote wheelchair athletics is something.
It's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to find followers for. It's a hard thing to get comments and likes for. It's a really difficult task. And I don't know the perfect way to perfect it. I really don't. I don't know.
Yeah, but it is something worth considering, or worth putting out there as an issue, because the representation issue will always be present in journalism, regardless of what is being covered. But I feel like the representation issue is magnified when you go do something like we do, covering wheelchair sports. During my brief time on the show, one of the questions I've learned to ask, the majority might guess, is what symbolic meaning does X, whatever the sport they play is, have to? And the variety of answers I get is just fascinating. All these people are leaders in their sports and have come out of their shell and used their participation in sports to help them do that. So I'm starting to view able-bodied sport or Paralympic sports as not only the games themselves, but a promotion of a voice.
I agree with that.
So, for those of our listeners with disabilities who don't play sports and don't cover them, how do you think we can all have a voice in this kind of context?
Are you asking me how we can have a voice?
Yeah, or how personally have you use your influence that we've already discussed to comment on these issues.
Just by making people feel more comfortable with what they're talking about and just trying to educate them more on like what we have to go through and like always being open for discussion. And I feel like the people who care about the people with disabilities are going to be the ones who you know they're going to be the people who care, and they're going to be the people who only help out because they only want the attention for themselves, and that's how it should be. They should, if they really want to do something about it, they should try to take action and take the initiative.
Yes.
And is it one of your goals? And it's not trying to put in a kind of you, but is it one of your goals to build your brand? Is that one of your goals?
Yeah. Yes. I want to establish two things. One, that I'm more open to talking about disability-related things than your average disabled person is. And two, I want to use that to really have people learn. In my college essay, I actually I mentioned that I actually grew up watching Yankee games, and the phrase that often opens the game from the commentator is, "Let's do it from wherever the Yankees are." So the opening line of my college essay was, "Let's do it from the couch," because that's where I used to watch the game. And as I grew more familiar with as I grew more familiar with sports as an industry,
Okay.
I began to use it as an avenue to speak about other social issues.
Okay.
For instance, Ryan just told me before the show tonight that he's doing a, you're welcome for the promo here, he's doing a documentary series on Paralympians who have kids.
It's an article series, feature series.
Yeah. One of the things I want to do, and one of the reasons I've come on here, is to discuss the role of being a journalist in a, shall I say, able-bodied world. I want to tell people that for me, the pen, and for these other athletes, the hoop, or whatever the devices that they play with, is oftentimes their way of expressing themselves. So, in light of that, I figured I'd ask you, since I don't have a guest on the show here, you've penned articles for a lot of different sites. What has your experience been working for those sites as a journalist in a world that has to be somewhat somewhat inquisitive, and you're the one with the power. You're the one asking the questions. You're the one writing the article. Has that been paradoxical for you at all?
Well, I felt like going back to when I was at DGN, which for those of you who do not know, I went to Downers Grove North High School, and while there I did a variety of things with their athletic programs, which included writing for their newspaper called the Downers Grove North Omega. And what I wanted to do when I came in there is completely change the direction of the sports section of that paper, because I remember reading that paper in the past and going, okay, these are all tabloid stories. These are all stories we've heard before. I want to get into the hard hitting stuff. So I made sure that not only with my positions, but I made sure to know as many people as I possibly could. And the key to being a good sports editor for that paper in particular is knowing as many people as you can. And I was able to break some pretty major stories. I was able to break 2 brand new coaching hires for 2 separate sports. Something I was never expecting. I was able to cover a girls volleyball team that made it all the way. That was one game away from going to the Final Four my senior year. I was able to change.
Wow.
I was able to change the way games for basketball and football were being covered with live updates, which is something they had never had done before. And it all culminated with the WGN television special, which I'm forever grateful for. But just the key to doing this job well at the high school level and potentially even at the college level. I haven't really had too much experience at the college level yet, but from what I've noticed, it's knowing the sports that you're covering, and it's knowing the people, and it's promoting your stories.
And it's finding the stories.
Right. And because if you don't do those things, you're not going to be successful. And another huge job that I had was making sure that the sports section of the website was updated daily with breaking news and all of the most recent scores from the games the night before and days previous to that. That way it was always updated on a regular basis, which is something they have totally discontinued ever since I've graduated, and they've completely gone away from what I told them they needed to do to keep being a successful venture. And that's unfortunately their loss, but that's what I've noticed, and I felt like I got more out of being a sports editor for 1 year than I would have ever done in 2 years. I think I did way more in a year than I ever thought I would be able to do, and that's something I'll always remember. I just went in and I completely changed the structure, and I tried to change the program, and they didn't keep with it, and that's unfortunately their loss. And now I can't do anything about it, but it's a direct reflection of that, and kind of makes me look bad in a sense because I tried to create a culture and they chose not to follow that. So yeah, I can't do anything about it now, but yeah.
I feel like a lot of these athletes as well, the ones with stories anyway, have tried to create their own cultures as well. And I think that they've met a lot of resistance. And one of the things I personally want to do is tell people those are where the stories are. Those are where the interesting nuggets lie. If you can have someone tell you the reason behind what they're doing, they
are completely doing their job right if they are able to do that.
Yes,
exactly. And honestly, this is just me, but when I did the job that I did, I didn't go in like all these other reporters who were on my staff that would go in with this approach that I would just scratch my head with. I'm going to explain it to you. They would go in and they would just be they would honestly just be journalists, and they would just literally try to get quotes. I'm like, no, don't do that. If you want to do an interview the right way, you go in and you get your quotes and you try to talk to them and have a one-to-one human conversation and try to get to know them a little bit. Don't treat them like they're a doormat. I mean, come on. Seriously, that's how you're gonna come off, and then the stories you publish aren't gonna be good. Like I called this from the beginning. Like I knew as soon as I graduated that section was gonna struggle, and it already has. It's been terrible ever since I graduated. And it's not a knock on them. It's just an observation, and things really need to drastically change if they want to get back to where they want to go. So,
we both know a lot of athletes here, both able-bodied and not, who we have personal relationships with too. One of them, for me, is fellow sophomore. I actually tried to get him on the show today to talk for himself, but he couldn't come, so I will kind of sub in that regard. So John McSwain is native of Michigan,
okay.
fan of the Detroit Tigers, likes to heckle me about that. But anyway,
What is his affiliation with U of I athletics? What sport does he play?
he just made the transition from basketball to track. Now,
And why did he choose to switch?
I-
So wait, so are you saying he was on the basketball team last year, which was not to try out for Underwood? Again,
It's not wheelchair basketball.
Oh, wheelchair basketball?
yeah,
Well,
Well-
you didn't say that.
wheelchair basketball. So his story is that track seems to be a better track for him because it's less, I believe, less time intensive. That's what he said. But I do think that there might be other motives there as well. One of which might be, and John, if you're watching, I don't mean for this to be negative in any way, so please don't take it that way.
Okay.
But I do think from what I know that the role of let's say the role of leadership off the court
Okay.
might be a reason. So in light of that thing, why don't we take a moment to talk about the role of coaching and how that may affect the performance of athletes. So, in the athletes you've covered, have they cited the coach at all as
As someone who they trust, yeah, that's happened in the interviews that I've conducted. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And in those cases, has the team been successful on high spirits, on high morale?
Like since the interview occurred? Is that what you're saying?
In other words, has the coach's attempt to instill culture of acceptance or otherwise been the thing that propels the team?
I believe I would concur. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Absolutely.
so especially with athletes with disabilities, the limited the limit the limited experience I have with them tells me that the coaches kind of adopt a father figure role.
What do you think of that?
Uh, I think that that coaching style is only effective if you know how to effectively use it. A great example of this here in Illinois is
Wheelchair or able body? What example are you going to use?
one of each.
Okay. I think I know what you're going to say for able body, but I'm going to let you take that.
Yeah, yes, exactly. You probably do. I'm gonna mention the volleyball.
Coach Thomas.
Yeah, Coach Thomas is really understands the fundamental idiosyncrasies of the game.
Yeah, I can tell just based on his brief interactions, and I'm not trying to speak for him, but I can tell just based on my brief interactions with him that he if they lose, which has been very rare this year.
They've only lost
three games, but what I'm saying is when they lose, which is a very rare thing, he'll talk about the mistakes and then he'll immediately go into what do we need to do to get better. He doesn't overanalyze anything. If they lose, he just moves on and he just moves on to the next game. And I think that that's great. He barely spends any time, according to what I've seen, thinking about what he needs to do in order to improve. He just goes out and allows his girls to play under the freedom of him, and that's why it works so well.
Coaches need to have.
That's why they're good.
Short memories.
Because I guess Coach Hambley was more of a statistics guy, and of course he went to Stanford and he's leading a great Stanford program. But I guess that's one of the main differences between Hambley and Thomas. Is Thomas really doesn't focus on that; he just focuses on the task at hand.
No.
And Hambley was more of a pregame guy. I can kind of tell when Thomas is more of a game day coach, and I think that that's what U of I needs to be successful. We need game day coaches. So,
yeah. One could argue that mentality
being a game day coach or being a pregame coach
of being a game day coach and having a short memory is even more important
than the X's and O's during the week, is what you're saying.
When you're dealing with disabled athletes. A perfect example of this is current wheelchair track coach Adam Blakeney.
Okay, and what does he do to motivate his team?
In my brief interaction with him, this opinion is not based on much, but take it with a grain of salt. He really knows what athletes to put the pressure on and what athletes
to just let them run.
To let them run. With Tatiana McFadden, a name we've mentioned a lot on the show, he just lets them run. Whereas with some of the others, he'll really sit down with them and coach 'em.
and actually try to coach them, which I actually think is perfect because that shows that not only do you believe in the players that are like, okay, because coaching each player the same way, just in my experience, because I've seen a lot of practice for other sports, I think everybody should have a different definition of the word coachable. And I don't know if you agree with that, but I've just noticed that certain players do a better job with different coaching styles than others, which is why I think coachable is such a broad word that you can't put your finger on what exactly the word coachable means. Does that make sense?
Coachable to me is undefinable.
I would concur with that.
The idea of finding a coach, especially in the college game, to fit a pre-ascribed culture is absolutely ridiculous to me.
I think it is too. I would agree with that.
The idea is to let the coach create the culture. And
Not go off of not try to fix the old regime.
because
Completely, so what you're saying is if a new coach gets hired, right, and they come in day one, and so what you're saying is from day one, they want to set a precedent to completely change the regime, not go in for the quick fix. Because
exactly,
the quick fix approach doesn't work 99% of the time.
right, exactly, because something I found interesting
Okay.
is a lot of coaches go from the professional leagues to the college game.
Which I'm one of these people that believes that if you are a college coach, you need to stay in college. Because besides rare exceptions, okay, besides Jim Harbaugh and Pete Carroll, okay, I don't understand why these college coaches who want to go to the pro game when the games are totally different. You don't have the campus feel. You're dealing with grown men that are making millions and millions upon dollars to play football or basketball, or whatever the sport may be. It does. The numbers will tell you that it does not translate. I've always had the belief, and my dad has this belief too, that if you are a college coach, you need to stay in college and you need to keep being successful. And it's the same thing. If you are a pro coach, why would you go to college? Why would you do that?
Right. A prime example of this application is a wheelchair basketball coach, Matt Bushy,
Okay.
who is a former athlete here, won a championship here in, I believe it's 87.
Okay.
And therefore knows what cultural elements
Okay.
work
Right.
in this specific university. Now, I'm gonna get opinionated here, and I know that generally I'm supposed to provide you with news, but I can't help myself on this one. But as an University of Illinois student, I don't feel that anyone cares about our sports as much as I think people should
Care about our sports overall. So you
Yeah.
think that we have a lot of unloyal fans, is what you're saying?
We have a lot of apathy towards our sports teams. And why is that? Because they don't win. And why is that? Because
It's because of our culture that we've established for years that doesn't really seem to
Exactly.
that doesn't really seem to change. I mean, and I'm not trying to rip on it. We're trying to make a comeback, but
Yeah.
past history tells us that nothing changes. I mean, it's that simple.
We are the leading university in social change for this this athletes with disabilities. We're the leading program in that, but yet we can't seem to change the majority of our coaches to reflect that.
I would concur. Yes.
So in light of that paradox, what do you think? Three things I've noticed about Adam Blakeney and Matt Bushy is that they both know a lot about their players and mandate off the court experiences
To them to motivate them.
Yeah, mandate off the court experiences for the team so that they gel and the whole experience isn't just playing the sport. It's a whole year-round process.
Mm-hmm.
So, to bring it back to something a little more relevant and to tell you why I mention all of this is I've been thinking about the role of culture in the perception of disability, and I think there's a lot to be desired there, you know? And sports is an avenue through which these athletes and fans, admittedly, there aren't as many of them as there could be, but can express their support in it's almost like a social movement, you know, where people are learning to support individuals with disabilities through sports here.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that's been so successful? Why here? Why now? What has this university done? I know you've only been here a year, or not even a year, a semester. Wow. But I know you've only been here for a short period of time, but what to you has this university done well that has allowed this change in perception to start to happen?
Well, it's a very open campus, so like we're able to like easily understand directions as to where things are at, like locally on campus. And I think just an important thing is just try to be involved in the school spirit. So like if you're a sports fan, you should try to go to as many of the games as you possibly can. Try to support all of the teams. And I'm gonna start to take on some new ventures. So like seeing some teams I've never seen before. So that's something that's kind of important to me. I want to be like well versed like in all of the and like knowing about all of the teams by the time I graduate, like how good they are and like who the players are, and try to get to know all of them and all that stuff, because I think that that's important. So
for those of you who don't know, I release daily predictions on my Facebook page for Illini games. Granted, those predictions may be a little biased towards what I want, but for the most part, I like the feeling of being the underdog. And a lot of people with disabilities, I feel like, are the underdog, not necessarily here, but elsewhere. If you were to speak to that sort of sentiment, what comes to mind? Are we the underdogs? Do we have a social responsibility to compensate for that through sports? Is that why you're in journalism? Is that why you've chosen this pathway?
Well, I've chosen the pathway because I like sports and I want to get to know the athletes more. I don't think it's really about being an underdog, really in any sense. It's just doing what I feel is my calling, I guess. It's not really because I have a disability and I'm trying to prove anything. It's just something I want to do. So.
Because for me, I found that a lot of what I want to do with it is prove people wrong. I feel like there are a lot of naysayers out there that,
for you or for anyone?
For anyone, on any issue that are entitled to representation in the news, but sometimes overshadow more important things.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like my role and the show's role, which is why I came here,
okay,
is to shed light on some of those issues and show that disabled people are, at the end of the day, people who have just as valid an opinion as their able-bodied counterparts. And one of the ways I find most easy to do that is by using sports, a fun atmosphere type activity to kind of dampen the blow a little bit, if you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's not how you feel, that's okay. But you use the word calling. So if not that, what called you to it? You know?
Because I knew it would be the other outlet for me because I can't play sports.
Exactly. So with the pen or typewriter in your hand, do you feel empowered?
Absolutely.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
What I guess where I'm going with this is, what would be the social message that you are trying to send with your journalism?
That anyone can be a reporter, no matter who you are. as long as you know what you're talking about, and as long as you have the right angle and right sources, you can talk about whatever you want.
Yeah.
And it's just the way you phrase everything. So it doesn't matter if I'm in a wheelchair. It doesn't matter if I can walk. If I want to be a journalist, I can be a journalist. It's not impossible. It's not an impossible feat. Now it's impossible to make money early in the business unless you get lucky and you get a big time job. It'll take you a few years, but that's really the goal.
So I guess in a sense, to loop it back to something we've said before, we are coaching the public, you know, and the right way to do that is something I spend. I don't know about you, but I spend a lot of time thinking about how should I approach interviewing someone. I actually find it harder to interview people with disabilities than I do people without them. Because for those of you who don't know, I grew up as the only disabled kid in my school. And as
Yeah, I was the only disabled kid who took regular ed classes too at my school.
Yeah. So you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
So that gave me, I feel like, somewhat elevated status at school because I'm a journalist who covers the school. I did in high school and I still do now, obviously. But I want to level the playing field, you know, so that you shouldn't elevate people accomplishing things in spite of disabilities above you. But I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is that what takes these athletes towards sports a lot of the time is the adrenaline lift.
The adrenaline lift, and for others, it's because they need to find a way to get out because they're in a bad neighborhood and they need something to keep their mind off of it, and they know that they're probably good enough to go somewhere in life because they can play a sport. And that I think is, some may say it's cliche and stupid. I actually think it's really cool that some athletes who grow up in those broken environments can try to find a way to make their life better by using sports as an outlet to show how good they really are at doing something. You don't have to be a whiz either in order to be. You really don't. I mean, if you have the talent to do it, you're gonna go places. So,
do you know the story of Lauryn Hill?
yes.
For those of you who don't know, Lauryn Hill, to go back to the theme of cancer for a minute, Lauryn Hill was a college freshman at MSU who was diagnosed with a terminal form of cancer in the brain, who had the goal of playing in one single college basketball game. One single game.
For Michigan State, that's correct.
Yes. It didn't matter that her coordination was such that she couldn't dribble a ball. She wanted
to play in the game. Yes.
To play. And I feel like that is what we're trying to expose here as journalists. I feel like a lot of sports coverage and a lot of able-bodied sports coverage focuses on those athletes who do well and not necessarily the investigative digging that makes a good story. But we here at the University of Illinois have the opportunity to dig into that and get to know our people really well. And that is an advantage that the majority of college campuses, I argue, can't say, because they don't have access to as many members of an underrepresented group as we do.
I would concur with that as well.
So, do we have a different role here? Can we? I hate to phrase the question this way, but can we fulfill the purpose of journalism any better because we have this pot of people to draw?
I think so. It just depends on the. I think it depends on the approach and where we want to go with it.
So I think that an argument that, or not even an argument, it is more important for representation in journalism to be allocated to wheelchair sports because they're underrepresented. I mean, that sounds very obvious, but there could be a story behind why that athlete has chosen that sport that can be very compelling, that doesn't get covered due to biases toward ableism and other things of that nature.
Yeah, I think we should. I think we should leave our viewers with that question as to why.
Yes. And with that, we've concluded our hour of showtime. So, for Zane Mando and Avery Schaefer, this has been a slightly different edition of
That is
part 2 of The Rolling Illini. Join me tomorrow for my own personal Facebook Live, where I will continue to discuss this stuff. Q&A with ZNA. I have developed a name for that. What do you think? But for now, Avery Schaefer, Zane Mando, signing off.